So about a year ago, I made a video talking about getting perfect contest stats just by using the e-reader exclusive Nut Pea Berry. In that video, I cautioned against using that strategy as it was basically just a meme build and there were other saner strategies to maxing out your contest condition. There are some of you who saw this peanut-fueled madness and wanted to replicate it. So in this guide, I will explain how to get the best contest stats in all 4 generations they feature in, and hopefully convince those few people that there are better ways than eating 200 cubes of peanut butter. A quick rundown for those who didn't watch the last video: every Pokémon game that has contests has a visual segment where the audience judges the Pokémon, and you earn points by raising a Pokémon's 5 visual features with snacks. These stats range from 0 to 255, and also, just as a quick correction to the last video, I said only the contest Pikachu from Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire starts with any contest stats, but weirdly, NPC trade Pokemon from the Hoenn games and Fire Red and Leaf Green also have raised starting contest stats. There's also a limiting stat called Sheen that rises as you feed your Pokemon, which will eventually cap out and prevent you from raising their contest stats any higher, making it a tricky balancing act to raise their stats high enough while also keeping their Sheen from hitting the maximum. Before we can begin cooking, we need to know what recipes we want and what ingredients they call for. This is where these spreadsheets made by Sadistic Mystic come in. They're pretty much the authority on efficient Pokéblock and Poffin recipes, so using these recipes is going to be your best bet. There are lots of different groups of berries, but in general, the harder a berry is to obtain, the stronger the resulting blocks will be. These spreadsheets are divided into sections based on how many linkable systems we have to cook with and which rarity of berries we have access to. Once we've narrowed down what set of blocks or poffins we're making, let's go column by column and understand what all these numbers mean. These first few columns are what results you'll see out of each set. Ho and Min is the minimum points this set will earn you in any one category's visual round, which is determined by the contest type and its 2 ally stats, plus a bonus for how much Sheen you have, which will almost always be maxed out in Generation 3 and 4. The total column shows the sum of all 5 categories. Sinnoh sum will show you how many hearts total you'll earn from the crowd in Sinnoh's super contests, and stat min and total will show you the lowest actual stat in the set, and the total stat points this set of Pokeblocks will net you out of 1,275. The spicy, dry, sweet, bitter, and sour columns will show you exactly what stats you'll be getting, assuming your blender reaches the minimum target speed. Either 90 when linked with other players, 97 with NPCs, or 150 with the Blend Master, and the blender only accounts for the top speed it reached, meaning if you get to the target for a few frames and then the speed drops, it'll still work. These numbers are entirely achievable with one player only inputting on one Game Boy Advance system, and there's no penalty if the others don't make any inputs. It's entirely possible to beat the target RPM, so if you go higher than these speeds, you'll be able to eke out slightly more points, but make sure you at least hit the target on the results screen before you keep a batch. For Generation 3, the biggest 2 factors in how well you'll be able to perform are how many games and Game Boy Advance systems you can connect to each other, and which berries you have between them. In Generation 3, to get perfect contest stats, you will need 4 Game Boy Advances and have access to the Ganlon, Salac, Pitaya, and Apricot berries that you can buy in Mount Battle in either Coliseum or XD Gale of Darkness. XD also has a Salac berry available for beating Battle CDs 44 and 45, and if you don't have either of those games, you can technically get them elsewhere, though it's definitely not preferable. The US Coliseum bonus disc has a gift Jirachi on it that carries either a Ganlon or Salac berry when received, and if you're truly desperate, you can find Battle Tower opponents that have these berries equipped and use the glitch with roaming Latios or Latias in Ruby and Sapphire to catch the Battle Tower trainers as Pokemon and take their berry. There are recipes utilizing the Lychee berry from Mirage Island, but that one won't be needed here. Now, because you need so many consoles running next to each other while making perfect contest stat Pokemon in Generations 3 and 4, you might find yourself quickly running out of desk space while you cook. And that's where the sponsor of this video, Flexispot, steps in. Flexispot makes a variety of standing desks with a bunch of nifty features. As the winner of the IDA Design Award, their desks have plenty of useful quality of life designs, such as wireless charging built right into the tabletop, which is a really convenient way to charge your devices. With the elliptical leg design and dual motors, these desks are quiet and aesthetically appealing and also have great load-bearing capacity, allowing me to fit both my monitors, my game consoles, and all of my games, and still have plenty of room while playing Pokémon. This model that they sent me even has USB ports for charging, and a super convenient drawer built in that perfectly houses even more games and systems. If you're like me and spend a lot of time working from home or otherwise sitting in front of your desk, then Flexispot is a great choice. It's easy to control with this panel on the right, and you can save up to 4 different heights with these buttons that will allow you to switch between sitting and standing at the perfect height with the press of one button. A big thanks to Flexispot for providing the product shown and for sponsoring this video, and you can find my Amazon link in the description to check out what products they have on offer. There are 2 main sets of Pokeblocks that you can use here to get to the maximum of 255 in all of your stats, so you can use whichever set of blocks you want, with each having their own pros and cons. The first option only requires 6 blends, which is perfect if you have all of the berries in one save file, as you only need to connect to each other game once to trade 6 berries to each cartridge. The other set has 7 blocks, which means a few more trades, but also uses at most 2 of the 4 blocks you make in each session, which means you can max out 2 Pokemon when making one batch of these recipes. Once you have your set of blocks picked out, it's time to figure out what exactly goes into each recipe, and that's where this spreadsheet comes in. Depending on your previously established number of systems and berry access, you can look up the names of each of the blocks and find the exact berries to put into the blender. For example, the set of recipes we'll be using calls for 2 Pitaya Valleys, which we can find under the 4 linkable systems and access to GameCube Games section. So looking that up on the specific berry spreadsheet, we can see that a Pitaya Valley is a name for a 4-player blend containing pitaya, tomato, hondu, and raspberries. You'll also notice that each recipe has a final block listed in red. These are called finishing touches, and you can feed the blocks in any order, as long as you feed the finishing touch block last. It's designed to fill in the last bits of your contest stats and will fill up your sheen way too high if you feed it early. A quick tip if you're fine with using the Emerald Battle Tower cloning glitch, I highly recommend getting all the berries you'll need in that game and using the glitch to clone them to send to other games. This is especially the case with the pinch berries from before, as it can take hours of grinding on Mount Battle just for one berry, and they take 4 days of real time to grow when planted in the Game Boy Advance titles, assuming that your game's internal battery still works to even grow berries at all. Once you have the berries you need, it's simply a matter of blending them up and serving them to your Pokemon. Keep in mind that if you're blending with multiple cartridges, you can reset your game on the results screen if you fail to reach the target RPM, which will return your berries. The game will save automatically between each blend, so you won't lose any of the blocks you already kept. Keep in mind that link blending also gives 1 Pokéblock per cartridge, so for sets that require 2 or even 3 of the same block, you only need to blend once and then you can trade when you need to eat multiple. Any leftovers you have can be saved for another Pokemon, but just make sure to keep what blocks you made or things can get hard to track fast. So, now that you know how to work the spreadsheets, it should be smooth sailing for the next games in the series with contests, right? Just transfer some strong berries from Pal Park, toss them in the Poffin House cooker, and solo it like Hoenn, right? No. It seems Game Freak really wanted to crack down on friendless players like me in Generation 4, as I have found it entirely unfeasible to blend 4-player Poffins by yourself. And for some reason, Poffins are hugely nerfed compared to Pokeblocks. If you make Poffins by yourself or with 2 linked systems, they will be completely underwhelming. Luckily, you don't need 255 in every single stat to get the maximum number of points in Sinnoh's Super Contest. Unlike in Hoenn, your Pokemon's stats only earn more points when they reach certain thresholds, which will earn you another red heart from the audience on top of the 0 to 4 pink hearts you get from having accessories. Because of this, you only need around 200 in each stat to earn a perfect score in the visual portion. I will go over what it takes to get truly perfect stats in this generation, but before I do, I should tell you about the actual options you have: Platinum's Veilstone Department Store and the Mild Poffin. In Pokemon Platinum, the developers silently slipped in a basement to the Veilstone Department Store, and wouldn't you know it, they sell Poffins down here. Poffins that are way better than anything you could ever hope to make without at least 3 people. Using exclusively these Poffins will get you 5 of the 8 possible red audience hearts in 3 of the categories, and 4 in the remaining 2. Which is plenty if you have good accessories to earn bonus pink hearts. And if you don't have access to Pokemon Platinum, there is the Mild Poffin. You see this rich boy in the contest hall? Well, he is a dirty hacker. Once you've gotten your Poffin case and talked to this rich boy, he'll give you a Mild Poffin. This Poffin is immensely strong for Generation 4 standards, granting 60 points in coolness and 30 in all other stats. But this is the only one you're getting in this save file. This mild Poffin is impossible for the player to make, because player-made Poffins are capped at 3 flavors. So even though we can make other Poffins that are called mild, it's just what the game calls Poffins with 3 flavors above a certain threshold, they are not truly mild Poffins. So if you don't have Platinum, but you have at least 2 Generation 4 games, you can feed multiple mild Poffins to the same Pokemon by replaying the game up to Heart Home City, which is a couple hours and 2 gym badges in. Feeding a single Pokemon the maximum of 7 mild Poffins is actually enough to get you 255 in coolness, and 210 in every other stat, which is enough to get the maximum visual round bonus of 8 red hearts. If you're willing to gather 4 mild Poffins and you do have access to Platinum, then you can also score a flawless 8 red hearts in every category by eating 3 dry bitter Poffins, 3 sweet sour Poffins, and 4 milds. As a really weird brief aside in Generation 4, until you've gotten a Pokemon contest stats to where you want them, don't take them to get groomed in Heart Gold and Soul Silver from Daisy or in the Goldenrod Underground. It's invisible in Johto, but these salon sessions raise a Pokemon's beauty, but also at a really low rate compared to how much it raises their sheen. This is basically just so you can evolve Phoebus into Milotic in a game without contests, since they haven't invented the Prism scale yet. Now that I've fully disclosed that you have other options than what I'm about to discuss, there is a singular recipe that can possibly give your Pokemon perfect contest stats solely from Generation 4. There are a few berries I didn't mention from Generation 3 because they were never really required for those recipes. The Starf and the Lansat berry. Game Freak seems to think that these berries are a suitable reward for the following achievements. Getting all the silver symbols in Pokemon Emerald's Battle Frontier. Getting all the gold symbols in Pokemon Emerald's Battle Frontier. Walking 9,999,999 steps with a Pokewalker. Beating Pokemon Battle Revolution, going into Endless Battle mode, and getting a streak of 50 and 100 wins in a row, and then spending 34,800 Poke Coupons. These 2 berries are required to make one of the Poffins we'll need to get 255 in every stat on a Generation 4 Pokemon. Luckily for us, the clone servers set up by the Pokemon Classic Network also contain an endless supply of event Pokemon distributions that have been resurrected from their late 2000s, early 2010s graves. We can use this to get the Starf Berry from Goon Scizor and a Lansat Berry from the Nintendo's own Manaphy event. There are also a handful of other event-exclusive berries from event Pokemon that we thankfully won't need to get, like the Roap, Jabica, Mickle, and Custap Berry. The Enigma Berry, while easiest to get from an event Darkrai, is also available in Pokemon Battle Revolution, or from Pal Park if you transfer a Pokemon holding one of the e-reader berries from Ruby and Sapphire, like the Nut Pea Berry. The rest of what we need includes 1 mild Poffin, as well as multiple Poffins containing pinch berries that we can either transfer from Generation 3 or buy in Pokemon Battle Revolution. And finally, there's a new class of berry introduced in Generation 4 that have the damage from 1 super effective hit of a specific type, which can all be received daily from a woman in Pastoria City. Our final and biggest hurdle is a doozy. Having other people willing to blend Poffins with you. While the Pokeblock blenders had no qualms about non-participation, the Poffin Cooker wants everyone on board. When linked up with 4 systems, only having 1 person spinning the batter does absolutely nothing. And if the batter doesn't turn fast enough, it'll burn and quickly sap all the flavor from the Poffins produced, making them unusable. You might think you could just stir each DS with 1 finger, but they made the Poffin Cooker so needy about the shape of the circles that it will not budge if you are not making absolute radial perfection. 2 people stirring on 2 DSs each is barely enough to get it done without mistakes, but I find that 3 people stirring intensely is the first reasonable size to work with. Another departure from Generation 3's berry blending is that the game is not saved after any Poffins are made, meaning if there's any sort of communication error, all the Poffins you made since you last saved are turned back into their component berries. After bribing my 2 brothers with pizza for an afternoon and about 30 minutes of intense stirring, We now have one of the highest contest stat Pokemon ever created in Generation 4. And they still perform exactly as well as one that just ate some from Veilstone topped off with 4 mild Poffins. Just use Platinum, please, for your own sake. Feels good to get out of that miasma and talk about something that's actually feasible. In Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, they did away with the Sheen mechanic, meaning that every single Pokemon can get maximum contest stats just by chowing down on enough Minecraft gummies. There are 2 kinds of Pokeblocks you can make in Generation 6, regular Pokeblocks and Pokeblocks Plus. The only difference is that the Pokeblock Plus variants are much more likely to come out of the blender if you use higher quality berries. Pokeblocks Plus raise your stats by about 16 when you eat them, no matter how much you already have in that stat, whereas Pokeblocks will eventually fall off. It takes about 16 Pokeblocks Plus to max out a stat in any one color. The easiest berry to obtain that has a high chance of making Pokeblocks Plus is the Key Berry, which is a mutation you can find when growing Ganlon and Lychee trees next to each other in X and Y. Ganlon and Lychee themselves are a cross-pollination of Yachi and Hondu and Tenga and Quillat trees. If you toss 4 different colors together in the blender, you can receive Rainbow Pokeblocks, which increase all stats simultaneously. So long as you grow enough berries, perfect stats in Generation 6 is smooth sailing. And with that leisurely trip out of the way, now back to... oh, right, Sinnoh again. For all the flack that Diamond and Pearl remakes get, they actually did at least one thing better than their predecessors. You can actually make perfect stat Poffins alone. Well, not technically alone, but with your Pokemon rather than other people. A few of the berries that required Pokemon Battle Revolution have been relocated in the intervening decade and a half. Pretty much every rare berry can be found walking with your Pokemon on the overworld depending on their nature, and some of the event and pinch berries are now available from the Berry Master west of Hearthome and the woman who gives berries in Pastoria. A few of them, however, like the Pitaya, Apricot, Enigma, Custap, and Mickle berries, besides being given by walking Pokemon, are only available from Ramanas Park. The Hearthome Poffin House is pretty much just as awful as it was back in 2006, but BDSP did add a new kind of Poffin called the Super Mild Poffin, which is created if you make no mistakes while cooking and one of the Poffin's flavors is over 90. Despite looking snazzy, these Rainbow Poffins aren't the most efficient. That honor goes to a new Poffin cooker found in Hearthome's Amity Square, which allows you to cook alongside the Pokemon that you bring with you. For each Pokemon that you brought that has maximum friendship, you will receive a reduction on the smoothness of each Poffin you make, bumping their efficiency up enough that you can get to 255 in each stat while only filling the Sheen bar about halfway, even without the ever so crucial pinch berries. Since the species that can enter Amity Square are limited, I recommend catching a couple Clefairy from Mount Coronet, as they have a high initial friendship, and if you catch them in a luxury ball, it should be pretty easy to get them to maximum friendship if you buy some of the friendship-raising berries from the Battle Park for 1 BP each. With the introduction of the Brilliant and Shining contest, however, you may want to double back to the Poffin House with your prized Pokemon, especially if they were fed in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, as their Sheen will not have gone up at all from those games. The Brilliant and Shining contests completely ignore your conventional contest stats, meaning the only way to raise your visual score is via stickers or via the bonus from your Sheen. This also means that it's infuriatingly impossible to max out the visual score in these contests, as even with 20 champion stickers from Cynthia and 255 Sheen, there will always be a little bit missing. Once you've maxed out your contest stats, the easiest way to turbocharge your Sheen is to toss a few event berries into the Poffin House blender, and then just let it burn for 60 seconds, which will create a truly awful Poffin that gives 59 Sheen for pretty much no other benefits. Once you've fed your Pokemon a few charred pucks of what used to be rare berries, their contest stats will be ready to crush any Pokemon contest in their way. And all it took was some of the rarest fruit known to Pokemon kind. Huge thanks to Sadistic Mystic, the real-life berry master, for their work in calculating all these recipes. And thanks for watching.